I got a scar on my forearm from one of the dumbest accidents imaginable. It was a sunny afternoon in late summer, the kind of day that feels endless and full of possibility. My friends and I had gathered in my backyard for an impromptu hangout, enjoying the warm weather and each other's company. We were all in high spirits, laughing and joking around as we set up a small fire pit for roasting marshmallows. The fire pit wasn't anything fancy, just a circular arrangement of stones we'd collected from around the yard. We'd done this many times before, creating a makeshift campfire setting right there in suburban comfort. As we gathered twigs and small branches to fuel our fire, I felt a surge of energy and excitement. The day felt special somehow, like anything could happen. Once we got the fire going, its warmth and flickering light added to the festive atmosphere. We toasted marshmallows, making s'mores and competing to see who could achieve the perfect golden brown exterior without burning their treat. The air was filled with the sweet smell of melting sugar and the sound of our laughter. As the afternoon wore on, our conversation turned to feats of physical prowess. We started challenging each other to various stunts and tricks, handstands, cartwheels, and other displays of youthful agility. I've always been a bit of a show-off, eager to prove myself and impress my friends. So when someone jokingly suggested jumping over the fire pit, I saw my chance to shine. Looking back, I can see how foolish the idea was. The fire pit wasn't large, maybe 3 feet in diameter, but it was still an active fire. The stones around the edge were rough and uneven, and the ground nearby was littered with twigs and pine cones. It was hardly an ideal setup for any kind of acrobatics. But in that moment, fueled by bravado and the desire to impress, none of those factors registered in my mind. I stood up, brushing off my hands and declaring my intention to make the jump. My friends' reactions were mixed, some egged me on, while others expressed concern. But I was determined. I backed up a few paces, gauging the distance and visualizing my trajectory. I felt confident and agile, certain that I could easily clear the small obstacle. With a deep breath, I started my run-up. The world seemed to slow down as I approached the fire pit. I could feel the heat of the flames as I neared, hear the crackle of burning wood. At the last moment, I pushed off the ground with all my might, launching myself into the air. For a split second, I thought I had made it. I felt the rush of air around me, saw the fire passing beneath my feet. But then, disaster struck. My trailing foot caught the edge of the stone pit. It wasn't much, just a slight clip, but it was enough to throw off my balance entirely. Instead of landing gracefully on the other side, I found myself stumbling forward, my arms windmilling wildly as I tried to regain my balance. I took several uncontrolled steps before finally losing the battle with gravity. I fell, my momentum carrying me forward onto the rough ground beyond the fire pit. The impact knocked the wind out of me. For a moment I lay there, dazed and struggling to breathe. Then the pain hit. My right forearm, which had borne the brunt of my fall, was stinging fiercely. I pushed myself up to a sitting position, cradling my arm against my chest. My friends rushed over, their faces a mix of concern and barely suppressed amusement. I forced a laugh, trying to play it cool despite the throbbing in my arm. "Well, that didn't go as planned," I quipped, wincing as I examined the damage. My forearm had taken a nasty scrape from the rough ground. A long, angry red mark ran from my wrist almost to my elbow, already starting to well up with tiny beads of blood. It stung fiercely, especially when exposed to the air. One of my friends ran inside to get the first aid kit while the others helped me to my feet. I continued to laugh it off, making jokes about my graceful landing and stellar athletic abilities. Inside, though, I was kicking myself for such a stupid stunt. What had I been thinking? We cleaned and bandaged the scrape as best we could. It wasn't serious enough to warrant a trip to the emergency room, but it was definitely going to be sore for a while. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of ice packs and sympathetic teasing from my friends. As the days went by, the scrape began to heal. The initial angry red faded to a duller pink, and the constant stinging subsided. But as the wound healed, it became clear that it was going to leave a mark. A thin, slightly raised line remained on my forearm, a permanent reminder of my foolish attempt to show off. At first, I was dismayed by the scar. Every time I looked at it, I was reminded of my reckless behavior and the potential danger I had put myself in. What if I had fallen into the fire instead of away from it? The thought made me shudder. I took to wearing long sleeves, hiding the scar from view. But as time passed, my perspective began to change. The scar became less of an embarrassment and more of a story. When people noticed it and asked what happened, I found myself recounting the tale with a mix of self-deprecation and humor. It became a conversation starter, a way to break the ice in new social situations. More importantly, the scar served as a constant reminder to think before I act. Every time I catch a glimpse of it, I'm reminded of the importance of considering consequences. It's a physical manifestation of the lesson I learned that day, that showing off isn't worth the risk, and that true friends will be impressed by who you are, not by reckless stunts. Now, years later, the scar has faded to a thin, silvery line. It's barely noticeable unless you know to look for it. But for me, it remains a significant marker in my life. It represents a moment of youthful folly, yes, but also the wisdom gained from that experience. I've come to appreciate this small imperfection on my skin. It's a part of my story, a chapter written in scar tissue. It reminds me of that sunny afternoon with my friends, of the laughter and camaraderie we shared. It reminds me of the person I was, impulsive, eager to impress, and how I've grown since then. In a way, this scar has become a symbol of resilience. It's a testament to the body's ability to heal, to repair itself after injury. Just as the wound closed and new skin formed, I too have grown and changed over the years. The scar reminds me that setbacks and mistakes are not the end of the story, they're often the beginning of important lessons. I sometimes wonder how differently that day might have gone if I hadn't attempted that foolish jump. Would I have learned the same lessons about caution and self-reflection? Would I have the same appreciation for the fragility and resilience of the human body? In an odd way, I'm grateful for this small scar and the experience that caused it. As I trace the faint line on my forearm, I'm reminded of all the other invisible scars we all carry, the lessons learned, the mistakes made, the experiences that shape us. This visible scar is just one small part of the complex tapestry of my life experiences. So while I got this scar from one of the dumbest accidents imaginable, it has become so much more than just a reminder of a foolish moment. It's a part of me, a chapter in my story, and a constant reminder to approach life with a bit more wisdom and a lot less showing off.